Welcome to Middle Fingers Up, the show where we hold our heads high and our middle fingers higher. I'm your host, Kieran McKay. Today we have a special episode that aligns perfectly with our mission to build a strong, supportive community. As many of you know, this podcast is a platform for us. It's a space where we share our stories, uplift each other, and build bridges that connect us to a community filled with resources and inclusivity that grows our voices. Today, I'm honored to welcome a new supporter of our podcast, Hira. She's not only a counselor in mental health, but also a first-generation immigrant and the daughter of an incredible immigrant mother. Hira reached out to us with a heartfelt idea that I believe will resonate deeply with many of you. In honor of Mental Health Awareness Month and Mother's Day Month, we are dedicating this episode to celebrating the resilience and strength of immigrant mothers. Our discussion is influenced by the unique challenges our immigrant moms face, whether they join the workforce or stay at home, the stigma around accessing mental health resources, and the difference between true resilience and the harmful glorification of sacrifice. So without guests like Hira who take the initiative to share their stories and their ideas, we wouldn't be able to strengthen the community we're building here. So very, very appreciative for that. Thank you for joining us today and bringing such an important topic to our platform. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I already feel so warm and fuzzy on the inside.
I love it. That's also because we talked for 2 hours beforehand, but those are the best conversations, by the way, the ones that we don't record. Sometimes I walk away, I'm like, man, we should have been recording from the start.
Yeah, you might have to actually do a different section of behind the scenes. This is what we said before we were recording.
Totally. I have a bunch of after recording, like sometimes I'll leave it on and check in with the guest. But often I don't add any of that because they know that this is like their check-in afterwards.
Right.
But I keep that just in case we ever, want to get their permission or use it for something. You never know. So maybe we got to start at the beginning now too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how are you? Welcome.
I am good. I'm feeling excited. I will be honest, I'm feeling slightly nervous.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because it's so powerful what you do.
Oh.
The vulnerability that you put out, living your truth, telling your story. People who have been guests on your shows, like such bravery and courage. And I actually had to catch myself and really put thought into whether, because this is everybody's now, right? This is not just when we're sharing parts of our stories with everyone, then it becomes everybody's. So thank you for doing the work that you do, for building the community that you're building. Thank you for replying. I did not expect a reply at all.
Why? Why not?
Because it was late at night that I had sent that email. And late at night, I go to bed at 9:30, but it was at 11 or something that I had sent that email, and I was like, she's probably very busy and has a long guest list. Look at the people who come, like the amazing people who come and talk to her on her podcast, and what are you doing? But that's usually when I do my bravest work. Is late at night when I'm starting to get a little sleepy, and I was like, you know what? F this, I am going to just send the email and we'll see where this goes. And I'm so glad that I did that.
I am glad. And you also have to have like higher expectations from people that you send emails to, because we should be replying back to each other. But I had to. How could I not? Like, I wish I could read it out loud. I told you when I replied back, I wish I could yell this out loud to everyone. I can post it everywhere. I can frame it. I actually was so proud of what you sent. It meant so much that I copy and pasted it to my family group chat with my parents and siblings and our spouses.
Aww.
And sent this to them. My sister was crying. Everyone was like, oh my gosh. And I think it's just because what your email is a validation that this is our platform. This is a place for us to come and talk. And as much as everyone knows I love talking, it's not mine. And I can't do this without folks that want to be part of the community. And when you send an email like that, you didn't have to. And so that's how I take it. You're spending time with me. You have a lot of care to do that. You obviously think what we're doing is important to do that. So all of that to me is like, okay, this is a sign that we're building bridges. We're building a community.
Yeah.
So I felt bad that I was a day late. I was out visiting family and I'm like, okay, we had something going on the morning of, and then the next day I was like, okay, I gotta reply back because to me, I say this at the end of every episode, like these are door opening conversations if people want to contribute.
Yeah.
Or if people feel like they have an idea, like I don't know everything and anything, please send it our way. So when you did that to me, I was like, we got to get on it right away. Because also then what happens is sometimes people talk themselves out of doing the episode.
Yeah.
So this was a quick turnaround, but I'm getting better at those actually. I like these quick turnarounds. So I'm glad you were available. We live ish in the same area. So we were able to do it. And here you are sitting in the studio and we're going to pay tribute to our immigrant moms. Like what a wicked idea.
Yeah.
How'd you come up with that idea?
How did I come up with that idea? I just love mothers. I always have. And I think I've told you this before, but I don't know. It's just it's a hard job with no training, with no pay, and very little gratitude. Mm-hmm. It really is. And we love them, but we don't know how to tell them how much we love them. We don't always do it in the right way. So when I was a little kid, I've always just looked up to moms, and I talked to aunties, and aunties would absolutely love on me, which was I'm so blessed that way. And I come from a very emotionally intelligent mother, so she instilled a lot of that in us, in all three of us. I think that's where I thought, why not appreciate moms and immigrant moms, because there's so much they go through and so little is spoken about it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you sent the email, I had to sit there and think for a second too about you just hit the nail on the head about how underappreciated our immigrant moms are. And as soon as I read yours, like I was flooded with guilt. And it's not a bad guilt. It's good. It's good because I'm working through it. And I think many, many, many of us are, especially those of us that maybe are born in the Western world. And so we're trying to navigate being born here in Canada, let's say, and living in a household that is coming straight from, well, in my case, it was India. And there's a lot of clash. You and I talked about the whole divide and conquer where our history comes from.
Yeah.
And that history repeats itself in our homes.
Yeah.
And so we often have this, many of us, I'm not saying all of us, but my story was like, there was a lot of clash between my mom and I growing up. And I'm the oldest, so of course I know everything and I'm right. And now I'm going to go to school for mental health, so I definitely know everything. Yeah. And let's do the thing that moms love most is tell them how to parent their children, right? Like that's what every mom loves. So when I read that, I was like flooded with this guilt, but it was like such a weird thing to say, like a relief, because sometimes I don't mind that guilt. I feel like that guilt is pride that our moms did and do the things that they have done for us. And you and I are going to talk a bit about that sacrifice that, like you said, we don't always honor, appreciate, thank. We internalize in all sorts of ways. But here's the thing, like it comes up as we get older.
Yeah.
We can't escape it.
No.
You know, some of us cannot answer our mom's phone calls or, you know, move far away from them, but we cannot escape our childhood.
No.
It catches up. And that's part of this project, is going back and revisiting those moments as children to patch up our relationships, should we need to, with our parents, because they show up later in our other relationships.
They do. They really do. And I think it also comes from me not wanting to regret how bad of a daughter I was when I have my own children. Yeah. That's another thing. I was like, oh my God, karma is a bitch.
Yes,
so I just want to make sure that I get all the appreciation out there from my mom, so that I get very appreciative kids whenever that happens. And it's like,
I love that. It's so true. You're smart. You're way ahead. Yeah, because it does. Karma shows up. You know, the worst qualities in yourself you see first in your children. So you're like, oh, this thing that I really hate that I do, great, my kid does it, but why do they do it so cute? But then you also start to understand. And I don't know, I said this before, but it did take me becoming a mom to recognize the roles we play in our parent-child relationship growing up. I don't think that's for everyone. I think there's people that don't have to go that route. For some reason, I had to have a kid to start to realize, oh, okay, I owe my mom a lot of grace. You know, I owe her a lot of fist bumps for a lot of the things that, and it's not just like you and I aren't even just here talking about parenting. I think the thing that blew my mind by your email the most was just honoring them. Like, who are they before they became our moms?
Yeah.
Because we only know them. Like, we think their story starts when our story starts as a baby, but their story started way before that. So then we grew up mad at them, or why do you do this and that? And then, you know, as we get older and want to learn our own journey, we start to look back and realize, oh shit, my mom's story didn't start there. My grandma's story didn't start there. No. So let's back it up and figure out where did they come from, where, you know, and how did they get to where they are? And which is, I think, a big part of why you're here today.
Yeah. And we're just a chapter, really, in their lives. And because they love so hard and so deeply, they make that chapter their entire lives.
Yeah.
And they get to a point where not just us, they themselves don't know anymore who they were before they had us.
That's a really good point.
Who they were as a woman, who they were as an individual, what their dreams were, what were their favorite things, what were things that brought them true joy, right? And so many moms don't know who they are without their children. And they come here, they raise independent children who now have the privilege of privacy and boundaries and all those things. And they're like, where were my boundaries when you needed me 24/7? I didn't have that. Yep. So, and that kind of goes back and forth a little bit between children and parents, I think, where they're like, well, we're in a different world, different time. And they're like, yeah, but I also need you. And so I think that it's really important that we kind of honor our moms. And I think in our culture, we don't talk as much about their strength. We think of a woman as weak. And that is the exact opposite of who women are. They're so strong. Moms are so strong. Yeah.
Yeah, I think well said. Before we get into that, because I have so many questions for you, we should jump into our MFU. But before I even do that, I want to ask you, when you and I talked to prepare for this the other day, you had some really kind things to say about a couple of the episodes and people on. Yeah. And I sent a shout out to them, but I think it'd be really a cool opportunity, if you like, to send one particular episode that you felt connected to. Like, they listen all the time, the guests that were on those. So if you want to send them a shout out or anything like that, like, you're more than welcome to, because I think it was episode 2 that really connected you to Middle Fingers Up.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I still remember I was like driving home from work when I was listening to that episode. I was like bawling and I'm like, and Omar, my husband, was listening to it as well. And he's like, oh my goodness, this is good stuff. What is this? Yeah. Yeah. So I think your guests should know that. And I think it's still a topic. I think fertility is still a topic that's very taboo in our culture, and people don't typically want to talk about it. So kudos to their bravery and courage and talk about it and make it so relatable for the listeners.
They did. Stephanie and Harmony were just real raw. I mean, Harmony came in very emotional that day.
Oh, yeah.
And and she talked about it on the episode too. And then we named the episode after her quote. And she did not have to come in. She didn't, even when she shared, listen, I'm a little emotional today. We said, look, like we don't have to do this. Like you got to manage life. And she's like, but this is my life. And there's so many people that are living this life too. So a lot of our guests like you, like these women that, Stephanie and Harmony that come on, they're in the midst of their own journey.
Yeah.
They come on and they want to talk about these things. And I think that's what makes it so raw and authentic, because so many people connect to the real life experiences that in this case, these two women shared that many other couples are also experiencing. But like you said, no one talks about because the pressure. The pressure is, when are you going to have your kid? And that's all we talk about. When are you going to bring a baby? When are you going to have a kid? Not anything else other than, well, and also like, are we privy to that? That's the other thing, right? Like it's not even our privilege to ask that question of, hey, when are you having a kid? Like, who am I? But that's how our community, that's how we work.
Yeah.
And you shared a very interesting point earlier about where we come from and where fertility, we're such a fertile race.
We are.
Can you share that a little bit? Because it really, it sat with me. I never looked at it that way.
Yeah. So I feel like India, Pakistan, it's such fertile land, and other countries around Bangladesh, Nepal, right? Southeast Asia. It's such fertile land. There's so much resources. And what we're noticing now is there are many young women from that part of the world who are facing infertility. And as I think about intergenerational trauma, and I think about, making more room and space for us to talk about mental health, unpack some of the stuff that we carry with us, because as we all know, or the listeners might have heard, body does keep score. When we talk about intergenerational trauma, when we talk about the splitting up of countries and everything that we've gone through, maybe our bodies are just saying, hey, you're doing the work, you're breaking the cycle. This is more important, right? Let's catch it here. Let's take a pause. We don't need to be reproducing right now. We just need to focus on what feels heavy, what we've been holding and storing deep into our bodies. And so obviously, as we're unpacking all of that and dealing with that intergenerational trauma, our body is curbing all non-essential functions, which, yes, we're made to reproduce, but we also want to do it in a safe way, in a healthy way for ourselves and the babies. So to all the women who are and have shared their stories, if your body's giving you that signal and that sign, might be something worth looking at, might be worth digging deeper and being like, okay, what is it? And I know Steph and Harmony, both of them talked about like so many other things such as PCOS, things that we never saw in our culture, in the way we reproduce as a Southeast Asian community. So it's probably worth a shot to just like take a pause, break, and really think about, okay, what is it that my body is asking of me?
Yeah.
And can I just give it that first, right? And then you'll get to whatever is next for you. I think intergenerational trauma has a whole lot to play with. We know that it's not just 1 or 2 generations that go through that struggle. It's 7 generations before, and that is if the work is being done.
Right.
Right? If the work's not being done, which in our community and in our culture doesn't. There's research that's shown that out of Black, Hispanic, Asian, indigenous cultures, Asian people are the least likely to talk about mental health. Mm-hmm. So if you narrow it down to Southeast Asian cultures, I feel like those numbers will be even smaller. Mm-hmm. So it's okay. We can talk about it. We can cry about it. We can build a community around it, which you and people like Stephanie and Harmony are doing. And
like you coming along, right? Coming along for the journey. And I think we're all doing that. And I feel so grateful that we get to sit here because of our immigrant moms.
Yeah.
And, the whole surviving and thriving. We get to be in the thriving era and be part of cutting edge knowledge that is teaching us about our well-being. Mm. It brings me back to when the plague was happening and how they were trying to tell everybody about germs. Yeah. And because you couldn't see them, they didn't exist. Yeah. And I feel like for our community, sometimes that's what it feels like when we talk about mental health and intergenerational trauma, because you can't physically necessarily see it or connect what's happening to you physically, mentally to that. We think, oh yeah, that's just a hoax or you guys are just making shit up. Yeah. But there's so many of us now that are contributing articles, sharing stories. These stories get to be part of archives and data that hopefully helps build future generations with more knowledge around 100%. How do we address this. So it is folks like you that choose to come on and want to share tidbits and also pass on the knowledge to others. I just think that's what we're all aiming to do, is how do we manage, and grieve the survival part, but move to the thriving part, which is, here we are. So here we are. So shall we go to our middle fingers up? Should we do that?
Let's do it.
All right. What do you want to put your middle fingers up to today?
Oh my goodness. I want to put my middle fingers up to the systems in place. And when I say systems, I talk about our immigrant parents, and I talk about how they come to Canada with dreams, or North America, or, even from India to England or whatever, and they come with dreams and all of that, and the fact that they get crushed so hard sometimes. Mm-hmm. So middle fingers up to that, middle fingers up to having to pick between their own dignity and self-respect and having to provide for their families. And having to choose between those two things, middle fingers up to that. Because it breaks my heart to see that such educated, bright, intelligent people have to take up jobs that are considered, in our culture, maybe not, sorry for the lack of a better term, but beneath a certain education level, skill set, or whatever, right? And to come here and work at that level and rebuild themselves. Yeah. And in doing that, how many times do they maybe cry in loneliness? Yeah. Maybe they regret their decision, but they keep on making these decisions because they want to provide for their children the best and only the best for their children, so that their children can, like yourself and I, sit here, speak the language that's not ours in a world that's not ours, and actually open eyes of many people who do not know different and bring them exposure. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So, yeah.
That's well said. Where do you think we could start to shift that?
It's hard because we need to be vulnerable for it. And if we're going to need to be vulnerable for it, that means we're going to have to talk about it. And that's not always very easy for our parents to do. Yeah. That's not very easy for our grandparents to do.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's going to be hard, but I think when we start talking about it in a respectful way, we start recognizing, which I'm hoping that people start recognizing their parents and their efforts and their moms and their grandmoms. When we start recognizing and creating that space, we might actually give them that voice that has been silenced. And you and I have talked about that. Yeah. I think it's a long journey, but I think we've started on it.
Yeah. I would agree. I think it is a long journey, and I think individuals and families maybe all have different takes on it. Some families immigrated years before in the 70s, and some families, have just come less than 10 years ago. And so I think maybe a family coming today might have a bit of a different experience than my parents and my grandparents when they came.
Right.
And lots of similarities, but the world changes so significantly. So they're up against something different today than maybe they were 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things, though, when I hear you talk, that I think we missed out a lot on when our parents were surviving and going from job to job and working 12, 15 hours. Yeah. And, people make fun of, why do your people always have so many of you living in a house together? And you just laugh and move on, but they have no idea. And sometimes you feel like you don't really deserve to know what a community we're building in our house. And a lot of these families that are immigrating have nowhere to live, and they have to start somewhere. And usually the first family coming down is going to help all of them.
Yeah.
And also a lot of the families have to share these jobs to build a financial stability to get to where we all want to go. And I remember that. I remember my aunts and uncles and my grandparents, all of us living together. And when my parents had a little bit more financial stability, we moved out, and other family members got married and moved out, and those things. Yeah. But I also remember we talked through stories. We had different ways to share experiences and things. So one hand, we talked through stories, and we really had a lot of love in the home. Then on the other hand, we didn't talk with a lot of detail or substance in a way of, like you said, what brings us joy, or what were those hopes and dreams when they were kids. Like I would imagine my grandma, she fought to go to school when she lived in a village. And wow. Education wasn't really something for a lot of the women. And she went to school to be a teacher. And when she came back to her village, her middle fingers up was putting up an all-girls school in her village.
Yes.
And, and then she got married, and with my grandpa, and then they came out here, and she worked at a hotel downtown Vancouver, cleaning rooms. Yeah. And she did some other, odd jobs here and there. And, I always regret that guilt, that immigrant guilt of we never were taught how to have some of these detailed conversations and reflect, because everybody was just ship sailing. People had to work night shifts to survive and get the kids to school and do the basic needs. Yeah. If I had a time machine, I would love to go back and ask my grandmas and my grandpas, like, what did you want to be as little girls and boys? And even though this isn't what you think, your dreams don't matter because you sacrifice for us, but still, where's that innocence? Where was that childlike part of you? And what did you want out of that? That's where some of my guilt comes, because I get to do that now, right? I get to go back and reflect, and what do I want to be when I still get to say that at 43, what do I want to be when I grow up? I could literally change a career right now or in 10 years, and no one would think anything of it.
No.
Our parents didn't have that option. And I think sometimes it takes us, the thriving, generation, to grow up and to learn and to work on some of these things, to be able to realize, holy crap, they were humans, and they had so many things that they probably wanted as well.
Yeah.
But they didn't talk about it, and they put it aside for us.
Yeah.
And that's where that sacrifice word comes up.
It really does. And you talk about your grandma's story. What a wonderful woman.
Yeah, 100%.
I can't imagine the fight she would have had to put up.
Yeah.
And
she's a determined lady until the minute she passed away. I know I have cousins and family that are probably listening right now being like, oh yeah, that's Maji for sure.
No.
She wasn't a pleaser.
No.
And she loved you hard, but she didn't care to be fake or pretend. And I love that about her so much. I think that's where I got some of that from.
Yeah.
But that and her ugly feet. Isn't it so cool? We look at our body parts and our noses or our feet or hands, and I'm like, oh my God, these ugly feet that everyone's made fun of are literally my daddy. So how cool is that I get to look down and her feet ground me every day. But yes, as you were saying,
yeah, like listening to her story and how she was a teacher, because my mom is a high school teacher.
Yeah,
got her master's in chemistry, and she's very proud of it, because like all our parents, she went to school with so much struggle, right? We've all grown up listening to the struggles they've gone through. There's a little bit of exaggeration. They make it sound like
uphill both ways is not possible. You can't go uphill both ways.
They're like, oh, we had to almost like fight a war to go to school, it sounds like. But with the limited resources to get the education she did, and so she should be proud, and I'm very proud of her. And she was a high school teacher. And then when we moved here, she got her degree evaluated and all of that. And they said that she would have to do her bachelor in education again. And that's what I mean when I say middle fingers up to systems, right? So that meant 4 years of going to post-secondary and having to choose that or feeding your family. Mm-hmm. I don't know what her dream was. I don't know. And once we started going to school, we had such a big culture shock. Like, I remember there was somebody who had called a teacher a bitch. And for me, that was huge, because where we come from, teachers are noble professions. They're the educators of generations. So I remember having a conversation with my mom, and I was like, Mom, I low-key don't want you to be a high school teacher, because I don't know what I would do if somebody were to talk about you like that. Yeah. And, she laughed about it, and she's like, yeah, I don't know if we can do this, yada, yada, yada. And she took up a job, the first job that came her way, and she worked retail for the first time in her life. And that's where she learned what it was like to stand on her feet for 8 hours, 9 hours. That's where she learned what it was like to be talked down to, right? Because people don't necessarily talk to people at retail or workers at retail with a whole lot of...
100%.
Right? Yeah. And respect is a very different thing when you look at how respect's looked at in North America versus back home. So she had to do that. And I remember both of us had taken up jobs at the airport. And I remember one day, we got home, and this was after it had happened. And she said, one of my tasks that I had to do on my shift was mop. And she had to take the mop bucket close by where my kiosk was, because I worked at a different place and it was at a kiosk. And I remember she said that I had to wait for you to go on your lunch before I could do that, because I was so worried that if you were to see me that way, what you would go through. So even in that moment where she's giving up such big pieces of her self-identity and doing such hard work, the mother inside her is worried more about how it might affect me, how it might break me, how it might hurt me. And when I talk about that selflessness is just something that I think it only exists in a mother or a grandmother or a maternal figure. I don't think we can see that in other people. So, and she's had to do that. And, it's been hard. And finally, she's happy now. I don't want to, I don't want any of the stories that we share today to come across as, oh, poor them.
Oh, please.
Right.
They'd come over here and smack someone straight if someone ever saw them as that. Nor are they ever asking to be seen that way, because that's, I agree. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because this isn't a poor me. This is like honoring. So there's a significant difference here. Honoring and maybe even talking out our guilt together. Supporting each other with that, because that's why I'm here. We're working through that. What did you say though when your mom came home and told you that story? First of all, how long before that had you immigrated? Because you guys, your story is you were born in Pakistan.
I was.
And 2 months
it was
Dubai.
2 months when my parents flew me to Dubai. And then I grew up in Dubai. And then we had applied for Canada, and we hadn't heard from the process much. But my parents weren't holding their breath, because they were loving their life in Dubai. My dad had a really good job. My mom had a really good job. We were going to really good schools, living in a very good house. So they weren't, like, oh, we need to do this. But then 2008 hit, and a lot of people in that recession were losing their jobs. So my parents hadn't lost their jobs yet, but they were at a point where they're starting to think what our backup plan is going to be. So it's either going to be, are we going to find a new job, or are we going to have to go back to Pakistan? Because you don't get a citizenship living in Dubai. So if you do not have a job, it's very hard for you to live there if you're not a business owner or property owner, if you're just working. So it was kind of getting to a point where we were like, okay, maybe we'll, start fresh. Well, there were so many families who moved back to Pakistan. I have to correct myself every time because I say Pakistan, and I've been taught to say it that way because of language, but Pakistan.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
This is my name. My name's not really Kieran.
No, it's Kiran. Yes.
One day I will get to a place where when someone asks me my name, I will be able to say Kiran.
Yeah.
One day.
Yeah.
I'm getting there.
I am there. I am there. I'm saying Hira. It has to be pronounced right. So we were maybe thinking that, okay, we'll go to Pakistan and, we'll live our life. And there was some excitement because we had never lived with our cousins. And every summer vacation, we'd go back to Pakistan. We'd come back to Dubai crying. Oh. Right? Because our grandma is there, our cousins are there, our aunts and uncles, then, everybody's there. And as we're like talking about this, our papers come through.
Oh, wow.
And that process went through, and our parents, it was like, okay, what opportunities are our kids going to have in Pakistan versus what they're going to have in Canada? And I'm sure they believe that, and which is also true, is that we have better opportunities here for higher education, post-secondary education. And that's how we decided, and we flew here. And some of our family friends, which to this day, my mom has taught us to never forget anytime anybody's ever done anything for us. So some wonderful family friends, and they had checked out a place for us and got us a rental agreement, yada, 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 came here. And within the first 6 months, my mom had gotten a job. Even though they had resources to, my dad, he took a little bit longer to find a job here because he was very adamant to stay in his field of retail. Yeah. My mom was like, oh, before we get to that 6 month where we're running out of whatever we've brought along, I want to make sure that there's some consistency.
Yeah.
So she got into retail. And this was another reason why I wanted to talk about what we're talking about today, is that flexibility, right? A lot of our moms who've moved here, they've never had a job. They've never, and whether we like it, I don't know, when we talk about it, in our culture, women do like to talk about food and hanging out together and, hanging out with their saheliya and, the clothes and shopping. And life is very, there's a lot of peace and sukoon and growing up back home for these women who have had to come here, and now different weather, different language, different systems, different transport, different, even the visuals. Can you imagine not seeing anybody who looks like you?
Oh, yeah. Everything. So, everything is completely different.
Everything. Or the fact that she had to wake up at 5 a.m. and walk to the bus stop all by herself. It was dark. And maybe she was, you talked about who they were before they were moms, but maybe she was a little girl who was scared of the dark. Right? But here she is as a mother who's walking to the bus stop in the dark, right? Taking a bus, going to an LRT station, taking another bus, and getting to work, and then standing 8 hours a day, and then still coming home in a time where she can cook food for the family, be there for the kids when they come back from school, hear about their day, put up with their attitude, which my mom she had low tolerance for. But
our moms were alike then. Yeah.
She had, but still, I'm sure some days I was a very difficult child to put up with.
I'm sure, yeah. Hormones.
Maybe some days it was me. Most days it was my brother and my sister.
Of course. Sure. You're the oldest. We can never, we're too busy. We're the oldest.
We have to be perfect.
Yeah, we're following everything in order and being perfect and doing all the right things. Yeah. They ruin it for us, the other ones.
They are, right? So... And my brother always used to say, it's not that I'm bad. It's just that she's too good.
Oh my gosh. Your brother's a good guy to say that. Good guy to say. My brother might think it, but he would never admit it.
Yeah.
He knows better.
So, for her to do all of that takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of bravery. And I know there's so many mothers. And I think it's also very important to mention that my mom still came from a work field and went into a work field. There are women who have never worked,
that's right.
only contributed in a certain atmosphere of being in their home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I still consider that financial contribution.
100%. Yeah.
Right? Because if they're staying at home and they're doing the laundry and they're doing the cooking and they're doing the taking care of the kids and bringing them up and tutoring them and helping them go to school, all of that is financial contribution.
Yeah. A very low paying job though.
A very
You're not paid very high with that one.
No. Yeah. They're the accountants.
Yeah.
They're all of it. So for them to then come out and do the work that they do, whether it be retail or cleaning or driving buses or whatever that looks like, that takes a lot of courage. Yeah. How many of us have the guts to do that at our age, even for not solely for our own purpose, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like some of us still can't leave our houses after COVID.
No,
we're still struggling with that. So I think a lot of what I hear is what probably many of us would agree with. It's like you're talking about this survivor mentality in that they came here and they hit the ground running. It's not a vacation. Sure, they were fortunate they had a little bit of money to tie them over, but again, they have kids.
Yeah.
And if I could just back it up, would you say the big reason that they chose to give up that good life was for the sake of the kids, to give the 100%. Kids a better life?
100%.
So then they're definitely hitting the ground running because their task for many of our moms is making sure the kids come first. And as you said, that is the identity. And I think a lot of moms, Western moms everywhere can share that. Our immigrant moms, that sacrifice, I have never seen a mother sacrifice in the same way that an immigrant mom does.
No.
And doesn't complain about it, doesn't make noise about it, doesn't say anything bad, doesn't regret it. And if they do, you'll never hear it.
No.
Maybe when the slipper comes flying at you, but that's because you did something with your attitude that had nothing to do with them. And we deserved it. We deserved the slipper coming at us. Like now when I look back, oh my God, I'd probably deserve more slippers. But I think like even when you break down the bus and these sorts of things that aren't typically what they would be used to doing, when they come from their country. And these are things that you're not necessarily like integration sucks. You also were part of immigrating. So, I mean, maybe you could speak to that. Like, was it smooth sailing when you came here? Did you get a manual? Did somebody take you on a tour and say, this is how the bus system works? Like, how did you guys navigate all that and figure that out?
So there's no system for it.
Yeah.
Right? When people move to Canada, it's like, oh, the highlight is done. That was you landing here. That's the highlight. Now there's a very ugly side of the picture that you're kind of entering. So we, again, the family friends who had set us up with the rental house, and they actually showed us around, and their oldest daughter as well,
of course. I wouldn't expect any other daughter but the oldest one
as well to take us winter boot shopping or winter jacket shopping, or because we came in October.
Oh my God, just before
it gets crazy. And I still remember there were 4 or 5 heads at the window. We had a bay window of that first home, and we had a couch that backed that window, and We're on the couch and we're looking at the snow for the very first time. We're coming from Dubai.
Yeah. Like, what's the temperature typically? Like, what's the coldest day in Dubai?
It stays in the 20s.
Okay, that's the coldest day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you be wearing sweaters and jackets?
Maybe. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We'd be wearing jackets. We'd be wearing sweaters.
Okay.
In like 19, 20 degrees. I don't think it might have shifted now, but I remember like 1920 probably is the coldest.
And now you're in Canada in October watching the snowfall. What are you guys thinking at that time?
We were actually the way, again, power of the mothers, the way they foster that relationship. I remember we all went out as a family and built a snowman together. Oh. And we sat in front of that bay window and we like are looking at people just walk by because there's so much white snow outside. And I remember people are like, what is going on? As they're walking by our house, they're looking at the window. And so it almost feels like we're zoo animals or something.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, what's going on? Why are they so... Because we're smiling year to year and it was just really cool times. But our parents made the most of it and made it as easy. So, but there are no system. Yeah. Right? Going back to that, it's just those interpersonal relationships that support that landing and guide us through what we need to do.
Just to go back to that though, so because I got more detail, but to answer my question that I interrupted myself for was, when your mother told you that day about the mopping, like she kind of admitted it to you, did you have a response to her? Like, because my question was like, how long before did you guys immigrate here?
So
it's about 6 months in, right? Okay.
Yeah,
so you just got here. She's working before your dad, which we're going to get to in a sec, because that's probably a whole different life change. But now she tells you the story about, oh my gosh, I had to mop and I didn't want to do it before you because I didn't want you to think something else of me.
Yeah.
What did you say? Did you say anything to that?
I clearly remember that I felt hurt about it.
What part of that?
That she had to pick that over being her proud teacher self. And I remember I felt hurt. And as I'm talking about it, I can really recall how it felt in that moment. But it was so important for me that she didn't see herself any less for doing that. So I said to her, oh, Mom, the culture here is that everybody sweeps and mops and the managers do it. And, it's not seen. And this is hard work. So in our Muslim language, it's halal that you are, it's not that you're sitting on your butt and waiting for funds from the government to come into your account. Mm-hmm. You're working hard as well. It's a joint thing. So it's not something that you should look down upon at.
Yeah.
This is... So I remember I said that to her. But in saying that and wanting to provide that, flipping that lens and helping her see that as a strength, I might not have validated how broken she might have felt in the moment. And I think today she can be very proud of herself that she did what she did, because she would have not known her own strength if she hadn't gone through that process.
Yeah, I bet.
But I just want to say that I can't even imagine that it might have hurt. And for her to still continue doing that is just something that I know me and my siblings will forever be grateful.
Totally.
And I know it's true for so many other kids and their parents and their moms.
What would your guys' take to be when on the flip side, here you are sacrificing and going through this part, and someone over here would say, oh, look at these immigrants coming and taking our job? You have to laugh at that, hey?
You do. You really do. Because when you see where their start line is and where our start line is, for them to feel threatened that we can still come and take their jobs away shows the resilience and strength we have. I've never
heard of it that way. That's amazing.
Yeah, because our start line starts miles back.
Yeah.
If you're worried that I'm still gonna finish the race before you or win, then that speaks to my resilience and my strength. and you're threatened by it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to take the blame for how you're feeling.
Right.
Like, up your game. I'm not going to make myself small for it.
Look at that. Hey, that's a very different way of looking at it. Appreciate that. Up your game then. If you want that job, then go get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I am here with my sleeves rolled up, willing to do whatever it takes for my family.
Nothing's beneath you, essentially,
No.
right? And that's like the message, the big takeaway from your mom, who, again, you guys are coming from this life that's significantly changed when you get here, and her response is, well, nothing's beneath us. Like, we gotta do what we gotta do. Yes, it's an adjustment, fair enough. The mopping, maybe there's embarrassment, maybe it's a letdown, maybe she wants to be the best role model possible to her kids, especially her daughters. But at the end of the day, I'm really glad to hear what you said, because that is a reality. That's a truth. Like, that what you're doing is the best lesson in life that you could teach me.
Yeah.
Which is, think about yourself, think about your family, and do what you got to do to not just settle.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to share my middle fingers up. Well, I had a couple of them, and I didn't know which one I was going to pick. But I think I'm going to go with the immigrant guilt. I kind of mentioned it. It's the immigrant guilt. So like the sense that I'm making of it is this need now to pay, like, as an adult who's a child of an immigrant parent, it's the need to pay our immigrant parents for their sacrifices. So that's the guilt that I honestly didn't have the language behind it. These feelings that you grow up with. You feel guilty, you feel bad, you feel guilty because you're not white enough, you feel guilty because you're not brown enough. You make sense of it, you do what you got to do. And along the way, you find some joy, you find some happiness, but the guilt doesn't go away. And for years, I thought my parents were bestowing, again, that guilt before me, and guilt, pack your bags, you're going on a guilt trip, like one of those things that I purposely do with my kids. But it wasn't that way. I think I was just trying to make sense of a little Punjabi girl born and raised in Canada, trying to grow up, first generation, and my parents are trying to figure out what they need to do, and they're assimilating. My dad's already sort of in some way assimilating because he came way before my mom. My mom showed up for her wedding. Like, that's her immigrant story. She was the oldest daughter too. Oh. And when I look back now, I think, okay, again, oldest daughter to oldest daughter in the room, we do a lot of first in our household, and we put up a lot of, whether our parents do it for us or we take it on, I don't know which one it is, maybe a little bit of both. We have this need to take care of our family. We're the one that came first. We get our parents' roles they play, their dynamics. Yeah. And sometimes we can fix things, and sometimes we think we can, whatever. We play this role. Yeah. And I think my mom, like, I'm just thinking about myself in that place. Like, I'm going to leave this country that I'm born and raised in, Canada. I'm going to move to a foreign country, and I'm moving there because I'm going to marry someone. And as the oldest daughter, she was doing that to take care of her widowed mom and her younger siblings. Oh. I'm sure that's not what she wanted to do. No. I'm sure if you ask her, maybe she wouldn't say it now because, but like, that's not what a 19, 18, I don't know. We'll never know how old my mom is. Her age is a mystery, but whatever age she was.
You never ask a brown mom how old she is.
Oh yeah. And she'll tell you a different age every time. So that's that story. But 18, 19, let's just, that's about it. That's the age. Like, a kid coming here to get married because the hope is that one day maybe you can bring your family over for better opportunities, which is what happened. My widow grandma and my mom's other siblings came here as well. And I know you and I were talking about this, and I always say it's the
3 S's.
Yeah, the 3 S's, the sacrifice, survive, and be silent. Yeah. That's the story of a lot of our mothers. Yeah. I was never given those options. I was told, do the best thing you can, and you don't need to survive. You can do better than that. You never have to be silent and use your voice. We don't have to sacrifice. We're in a first world country. We get everything given to us as kids growing up here. And even if we come from a poor home, our parents find a way to make sure we get the things we need. They always would go the extra. They would not eat their supper to make sure we ate. Like, they would find a way to take care of us. And so that's where that guilt sort of comes from, is like, I'm not going to grow up in a world where those 3 S's are necessarily going to exist for me. I'm not really sacrificing. I'm not really silent. and I'm not surviving. And so the guilt, it gets misplaced, and it's anger, it's not understanding where our moms come. And so this is a big part of when you reached out. I was like, this is so therapeutic, because we definitely don't have to be moms to know this, but we all come from moms.
Yeah.
That's one thing all humans have in common, is we come from moms.
Yeah.
And we don't recognize the power behind that, and we don't honor it in the way that we could or should and wish we would. Some of us have lost our moms and maybe can't make sense of that, have to do it without them. But you and I are lucky. Our moms are here. And so that we get to tell them in our own indirect way on this podcast how much we appreciate them. And also for us, child of immigrants, or as an immigrant yourself of an immigrant parent, I think this guilt is something that I'm hearing and reading about and seeing a lot in conversations. So I know it's not just me, but I definitely encourage us to like dig into that and tap into that. Where is it coming from? And if we can, like, go have those conversations with our moms and our dads and our family members, our caregivers. And if that's not possible, then having that conversation with ourselves about, this misplaced guilt is going to show up in different ways. Yeah. That's what my middle fingers is going up to, that misplaced guilt, that immigrant guilt. And can we, flip side now, turn that into honor?
Yeah.
Appreciation.
Yes. That
our parents did these things for us and they didn't know how, they weren't given a manual. Anyways, I don't know if you want to add to that immigrant guilt or anything that stands out for you as we talk about that.
I think a lot of it comes from a place of love too, because we've seen them go through so much. A lot of it comes from their parenting style as well. We've done this for you. You better do that. We made all these sacrifices for you. You better do this.
I truly now can say I understand the whole lawyer, doctor, engineer thing we all laugh about.
Yeah.
But it is. They're counting their pennies. They're working so many hours or sacrificing their own dreams, their own hopes for us. So why would they not want us to go be the best we can for us?
And I think we can change the language around that guilt as well. And we can change it to taking accountability, right? Instead of feeling guilty about having to, I get to do this.
I like that.
Right? Yeah. I get to. My parents went through so much and I get to do this because of that.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you some questions then.
Okay.
So you're a first generation immigrant. So I wanted to get the unique perspectives of you and your mom, because you both are immigrants.
Yes.
You are the first gen immigrant that I've ever had. I'm a child of immigrant parents. I talk a lot about that, but I've never actually sat down with a first gen immigrant. I've either talked to immigrant parents.
Yeah.
So that's really cool to have you sitting before. So I'm curious about the perspective. So as a first gen immigrant transitioning to Canada, what differences do you think you experienced compared to your mom when you were immigrating?
I think mom would have been very in the, got her blinders on. This is what we got to do. And I had more freedom around who I get to be. I had a choice, I say this very often that maybe my mom's 95% Pakistani and 5% Canadian. And I am 80% Pakistani, 20% Canadian, because I wouldn't be sitting here in a garada otherwise.
I know, right?
Right?
Let's talk about that.
I think there's a little bit of a shift as I look at my brother and my sister.
Yeah.
Because they were younger when they moved here.
Right.
So for me, it was, I got to pick. My mom, not so much.
Yeah.
Right? Because the way she talked, her accent, the job she was at, I was going to the same school that other white kids were.
Right.
My mom wasn't doing the job that other white women were.
Right.
So that's a very different perspective.
How do you think that played out for her and you? That's a really good point.
I think if I were to say, the positive of that I can imagine for my mom is that she felt maybe a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Because at work, having other Punjabi aunties or having other Pakistani aunties, maybe she can speak the same language.
Right.
Maybe they can curse at their white manager in the same language, who's so rude and whatever. So maybe there's like that little bit of a relief that there is some apna, like there's some sense of belonging in, okay, I get this little window of saying what I want to say without having to mince my words
Right.
or, I remember she had a conversation with one Punjabi auntie on the bus and she asked them, does dirt smell the same here when it rains?
Oh, wow. That gave me goosebumps.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And even though that Punjabi auntie is from India and my mom's actually from Pakistan, they connected and they knew. And my mom doesn't speak Punjabi.
Yeah.
And Indian Punjabi is very different than Pakistan Punjabi. So she didn't, but they were able to connect at that one point so deeply. I can imagine it, but I remember my mom saying, she nodded her head and she's like, yes, it does. Sometimes it does smell exactly like that. And something so simple.
Yeah.
Something so small.
It's part of our five senses, right? Okay, let's talk a little bit about, we were talking about these silent sacrifices, and I just want to come back to this for a second. This is the impact. So over the years, many of our moms, grandmas, as we talked about, they never complain about the physically demanding and mentally exhausting work.
Yeah.
They did this while still maintaining our households, taking care of the children, were well fed, educated, like we talked about this. And we've also talked a little bit about, I'm not realizing until much later as I'm reflecting about some of to the extent that our moms and grandmas are making these sacrifices.
Mm-hmm.
Even sitting here and talking to you and listening to your mom's story about the mop, that's really hitting me on a different level. I'm glad you shared that story.
Yeah.
So I had the opportunity to leave my job of 18 years. You've had an opportunity recently to leave job. I had opportunity. I'm very blessed. I could leave, give my family more time. And, even in this time that I've had away from my job, I've had the opportunity to make dreams come to reality, should I want. This passion project is one of them. Turning a dream into reality. That's huge.
Yeah.
I have time to sit and reflect in this first world about who am I? And, going back to find that innocence, like, what did I want as a little girl? Who did I want to be as a little girl? Sometimes when we're lost, it's helpful to go back to the little kid. As a little kid, what was it that I really hoped to be and wanted? And as I'm thinking about these things and picturing myself, asking myself, okay, is this what we wanted, little Kieran? Is this where we wanted to be? This makes us, think a little bit more about our moms and our grandmas. And they also had dreams. They were little girls. They were little innocents in their homes and playing and, doing the things they were doing, dreaming about what they wanted to be or where they wanted to go. They gave up those dreams, as we're talking about today, to tirelessly work in these jobs that don't really reflect their true potential, or even in your mom's case, training, right? So the silent sacrifice is this major reminder of these unspoken hardships many immigrant moms endure. And they often choose paths to prioritize their family's immediate needs over their personal dreams. And this illustrates that quiet form of resilience and love.
Yeah.
My question is, let's talk a little bit. If your mom was in the room right now, first of all, do you think were there any silent sacrifices your mom made that you only realized later in life?
Yeah, just even when I talk about her work story with that whole mopping incident, the fact that there was no validation, there was no time to hit pause, let me deal with what this has done to my self-respect, self-identity. There's no time. Time is a luxury for us to be able to sit and really ponder over how something makes us feel.
Yeah.
She didn't have that. It was get up, get ready, go and do it all over again.
Yeah.
I think even in my response, like I said earlier, it was more focused on pushing her and lifting her spirits up rather than validating that. Man, that could have felt very deep and that could have felt very hard and hurtful. So I think as I'm growing up, understanding that parents do whatever they know how to do the best way they know how to do. Yeah. And that's all they've got. Like you said, there's no manual. So I consider myself, especially during that time, one of her closest friends, because being the oldest daughter, there's such a huge time difference between Hira and Pakistan that she's not going to, in that moment be able to call her sister and vent or whatever. They might not even be able to relate.
Right.
So in that moment, maybe I'm her closest friend. And here I am saying, you know what? It's all right, mommy. Like, everybody does this here. And, don't feel bad about it. And even though my intent was nice and it was like, okay, I don't want my mom to feel beneath anything, or I want her to know that doesn't change how I look at her as my shiro. Today, I realize that maybe the little girl inside her might have felt hurt, and we just didn't have time, or maybe didn't have space to visit that.
Yeah.
So I think that silencing part, let's silence the emotion,
right,
and let's just march on.
If your mom was in the room right now, like what, like I've never even asked my mom this, and I'm going to now. What do you think her dreams were as a little girl? Like, what do you think she wanted to do with her life as a little girl?
She wanted to be, I think she was pre-med. So she wanted to be a doctor. She was smart, like she was academically very strong.
Yeah.
It was so advanced that, so my grandma grew up in Bombay, India. So when she moved to Pakistan, my nana, my paternal grandfather, had passed when my mom was maybe 7 or something. So she was a widow, and she wasn't very educated, but she was very smart because she grew up on the streets of Bombay.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So she was very, very smart. Because she wasn't educated, there wasn't a whole lot of support for my mom. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of academic support for my mom. So I think there was a point where she was considering becoming a doctor, but didn't have the resources. And that's why that dream kind of fell upon me. And as I was growing up, I remember, because I saw her being a teacher, I always wanted to be a teacher.
Right.
And that's where my mom was like, oh, maybe you could be teaching doctors how to be doctors. So you'd have to be a doctor. So she kind of diverted that and brought it back to like, oh, that funny conversation we have about being doctors, engineers, and whatever. So it came back to that. Until I realized that wasn't my dream, right? But that was, I think, her dream for herself, her dream for me, perhaps, and that is who she wanted to be as a little girl.
Resiliency. When you and I were talking on the phone, you talked a lot about resiliency in our moms.
Yes.
And I just want to ask you, how do you define resilience?
How do I define resilience? I think it's built into all people's DNA. It's something that we practice, because the more we practice it, the easier it becomes for us to do. The less we practice, it's going to prune away. So resilience is a part of our DNA. If I were to look at resilience, I look at resilience as lessons learned. And I think when we take our experiences, because we can sit here and we can be all mopey and, oh, I did this and this happened and that happened, which is actually not fair, because our forefathers have given up a lot more than the sacrifices we in our heads are probably thinking we're making.
Right. That's the privilege.
Yeah, that's a privilege. We could either sit in that, or we could say, okay, what can I learn from this? What is an action that I can do different? It could be something as small as, I'm not going to gossip. I'm not going to talk about another woman. I'm not going to talk about my body in a negative way. It could be the tiniest little bit. And when you unlearn and learn new ways, or maybe healthier ways of being, I think I call that resilience.
Yeah.
Because you're bettering yourself. You're upping your game. And that growth, I feel, is resilience.
I like how you say that. So then what is it not to you?
It's not sacrifice. And I really, really want to be very, very clear about that. Sacrifice is so glorified, especially when it comes from a mom. I have to hold myself accountable here.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Guilt trip.
I was reading some stuff before we were going to talk, and I'm talking about like immigrant moms and short stories about immigrant moms, and, trying to just like get in touch with get my creative juices flowing and stuff like that. And there's like this whole series of books that's based on immigrant moms and how they chose themselves over their family. So books about maybe a mom who chose to stay in a first world country. I know this is not the most appropriate term these days, but maybe staying in the US because the papers didn't go through for her child and her mom, and still choosing to be in the US because that meant better opportunities for her and maybe later in life for her daughter. And instantly there was something about me that changed that page. And I was like, how could you as a mom? What made you just decide that, I can pick me over my child, my mother? And I caught myself, Kieran, and I was like, oh, I'm talking about this. I am aware of the mental health that goes hand in hand with stuff like this. And yet, instantly, it was so easy for me to just swipe past that page and be like, oh no, I don't want to read these stories.
Yeah, that is interesting, right? Yeah. That also is an example of what many of us do if we want to, not grow, not learn, but also like not dig deep about that. Yeah. Oh, it's a defense mechanism that's going off, and we often roll past it because we don't want to go there.
No.
So did you go there?
I then read the synopsis, read the title of it, and I am working very hard towards putting it on my to-read list. Because we are raised to normalize sacrifice for women, for mothers, for grandmothers. And that is so deeply embedded into us that, look at me, here I am advocating for women to have a voice, or advocating for mothers to no longer be silenced in their sacrifice. And yet, when I read a story about a mother choosing not to sacrifice, I'm like, no, thanks. Isn't it interesting?
Yeah, that is.
So it's very deeply rooted in all of us.
Yeah.
And we have to catch ourselves. We have to hold ourselves accountable.
Yeah.
That it's okay for them to choose them.
Yeah. It's hard because, when you talk like that, I would say, oh, yeah, I got no problem reading that. I'm born and raised in Canada. You're taught in Canada, be selfish, pick yourself. I mean, if you go on Instagram and TikTok, everywhere we go, we're constantly encouraged, take care of yourself, self-care, take care of you, take care of you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are very good at that, and a lot of people aren't, and we all have to decide. Sometimes I'm better at it, I'm not.
Yeah.
But I definitely grew up in an era where part of my middle fingers went up growing up to fuck the Eastern culture. I ran away, as I always talk about, and wanted to be a white girl. And so I really, really endured the pick myself first. The best times that I have been a mother, a good mother to my children, is when I have taken care of myself. I have ate, showered, slept, basic needs, gone on a vacation. My husband and I have spent time together, and then I've gotten to spend time by myself. All those things have helped me be a really attuned, self-aware mother.
Yeah.
But it's a battle. You don't, like you said, it's the sacrifice exists a little bit different in the Western culture, but it's still expected as a mother that, you think of your kids first before yourself, or you live for your kids.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to go back and, when you can get there, read that. And that's a good thing to dig deep about is, as much as we though say we are picking ourselves before others, I think every woman would agree we're lying.
Yeah.
We 100 times have to do that dialogue of, okay, I fed the kids, I watered the plants, I mopped the floors.
Yeah.
Okay, now I can sit down and make that cup of tea. What would your mom say to you in terms of sacrifice?
That's a good question. I don't think she's ever promoted sacrifice for us, just the woman, for us. And I think that's the mother that speaks. Okay, no. If I sacrificed so that you don't have to.
Interesting, yeah.
Right? So it's the mother that says, no sacrifice. But the woman, I think she sometimes says it's okay to sometimes sacrifice.
Yeah.
The woman says, Yeah, oh wow, this is really cool. Yeah, as a mother, I think she says, no, don't sacrifice. But as a woman, she sometimes will agree that, yeah, sometimes you have to sacrifice.
Yeah. That's interesting. Why do you think there's differences there?
Because as a mother, you're protective of your child. Right. And you never want to, and you want your sacrifice to have meant something and be for a reason and have had good results for your kids, right? Yeah. So if she sacrificed and I also have to sacrifice, then it kind of belittles her sacrifice.
Yeah.
Right? So as a mother, she's like, no, don't sacrifice for yourself. You go, use your voice, spread your wings, fly. But as a woman, she understands that, yeah, sometimes I will have to cancel plans because I have to tend to something that my family needs from me.
Right. Right.
And
interesting.
Yeah. And she'll say, yeah, that happens.
It's like that demanding respect thing. Like what I hear your mom saying is like women's rights, don't give that up. We have a voice, we have a place, and it's not just one box we're supposed to be in. Our place is everywhere.
Yeah.
But I get, as a family person, I understand too what she's saying there. Like, but I think that's the fight, right? That's the fight, the woman and the mother fight we see. Like when have we seen our immigrant moms let loose at a reception party?
Oh my goodness.
And should they let loose? Yeah. All the other aunties at the other table are, look at these ladies, or, assuming they're drinking, and maybe they are, and, maybe some of us kids kept bringing them drinks so they loosen up, whatever. Like you said, like as women, we should be uplifting each other too. But I think sometimes that sacrifice kind of lifestyle continues because what will other people think mentality, and particularly what will the other women that are in the same bracket as me, what are they going? So then we're just all, our moms are just basing it off of each other, and everyone's waiting for the one brave woman to say, let your hair down and let's cut a rug on the dance floor or whatever.
Yeah. And that's so true, because I saw that with my mom. My mom's very outspoken. She's dresses a certain way, which is maybe very different from the majority of Muslim Pakistani women.
Okay. How so?
In the way she's very comfortable in what she chooses to wear, and she doesn't abide by any societal expectations in that way. And whatever makes her happy, right? And women there are so many restrictions that come with being a woman, and part of every culture, really. Let her just wear what she feels happy in or good in or whatever. I can imagine that there must have been, and I know there have been aunties who, look at my mom and they're like, she's बहुत modern hai.
Yeah. Oh my God. Too much, right?
Yeah,
too much.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Like it's a problem, right? But I think that is part of the problem, is the things that we are judging others, or the things that we are trying to figure out for ourselves or hope for or want, or judging ourselves with.
Yeah.
And we project it out there. Right? And that's what the aunties are. We always laugh. That's what the infamous aunties are always the best about.
Yeah.
If we sit down and listen to what they're saying, it's really just like hold a mirror to their face. And it's like, oh, you're actually talking about yourself. Or you wish you could, dress in that way or be in that way.
Which is also learned behavior. Which is also learned behavior, which also speaks to the trauma and intergenerational trauma and the societal pressures that they've lived through. And a lot of women, when they talk like that, I feel like there's maybe a little bit of, I wish I was that courageous.
Yeah.
I envy how brave she is. Yeah. I wish I didn't abide by so many of the norms the way I have. And I wish I was more like her.
Totally.
And instead of saying it in an appreciative way, we end up saying it in let's pull her down a little bit because I can't, speak for myself or advocate. And that silencing part comes into play as well.
There you go. There's that.
Yeah.
I like how you said that, because it's like sometimes the aunties are like a time capsule. You're like, oh, that when the things that they're like, getting mad at us about, I know there was a group in my time was because I was with a white guy. So that was, we were just introducing interracial relationships in my family, my extended family.
Right.
So I would have been one of the first. So that was in our time capsule, and the way that they responded, many of them respond, to your face, they're all like, and then behind the back you hear all these interesting words they, as a woman, choose to use towards you as a woman.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think the admiring of finding your love and no borders with that, and you're making your own choices. So let me ask you this then. Like, watching your mom immigrate here, how did your mom manage to maintain her cultural heritage while adapting to the new life here?
In so many ways. Yeah. I think in tiniest little things, and making parathas for us. And like
aloo wali paratha?
Yeah, aloo. There's one specific that my mom makes. It's like, and I'm sure more moms make, but I call it my mom's paratha. But it's square and it's meetha paratha. So she puts sugar in it.
Oh, my grandma used to do that.
Yeah. So she puts sugar in it, and it's meetha paratha. And lately I've been craving it. Yeah.
My mouth is like wide open because I have not smelt that or tasted that or heard of that in years. So like, that's so cool to think of my nanny, because that was what my nanny used to make us a lot.
Can I point out right now that, again, that divide and conquer, we're so similar.
Yeah.
And sure, yet we're not. We're all individual and unique in our own ways. But the power in that shared culture, when you're saying that your nanny used to make that, and I'm saying my mom used to make this, and that's so powerful.
I know, because like, where else would we, again, that racialized space, like so what made you want to point that out?
I don't know. I looked at you and I felt like we both recognized something that was very close to our heart. And that's a bond that we can't just share with everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important. And it's high time we understand that that's our power and that we utilize that power and get more people to join us in doing that.
It gives you wings, right?
It
like
does.
You just feel, I hear what you're saying with that power, because it was such a small little story, small little example. My mouth dropped open. You caught something.
Yeah.
And your story took me to, again, the time machine.
Yeah.
And maybe these kinds of connections help us go back into that time machine and go revisit, whether it was an hour ago, 10 days, years ago, or whatnot. But these little tiny moments, like you're saying, they do build that power. They build this connection in a way that, I mean, I don't know how you would describe it. Maybe you have a way to describe that.
No, I just feel like, somehow it's meeting somebody for the first time, yet having known them for a very long time.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a very kind thing. That's like, that doesn't happen very often,
No.
Yeah.
No. So seeing somebody and being like, oh, having that, okay, one less person to have to like put up a front in front of.
Yeah. That's very tiring.
It is. It's exhausting. When we see each other, we should feel, have one person in my corner already.
Yeah.
It should be like that. It should be like that.
Yeah.
Where I see another person of color, another woman of color, I should be like, okay, at least one person in my corner.
Yeah.
And that is what I'm hoping that we can all learn and grow. And that's what I'm hoping for our mothers and our grandmothers as well. That instead of fighting amongst ourselves, let's just see each other. Let's just appreciate the good. Let's try to not attach blame and just see each other and be like, you know what? Everything aside, you have me in your corner because I know I have you in mind.
Absolutely. And you make a really good point about one person in your corner. And if we could shift gears to mental health for a second.
Yeah.
You work in mental health.
Yes.
I've worked in mental health. And this is probably something I know I've heard, and I'm sure you see and feel work this too, is when we get clients, often there's no one. A lot of them have no one. And some of these kids and clients we've worked with are kids that are part of children's services, part of the government. They don't have any family. They can't find family. And as mental health workers, we've learned that if these clients that are experiencing these traumatic life moments, abuse, all these sorts of things, they can work through this should they have one person that believes them, that is by their side. Like you truly need one person there to give you the fist bump, the smile, share the story that you can connect with, to feel like you have those wings and you can move forward.
Yeah.
Mental health and our immigrant mothers for a second. Do you think our moms fully understand what mental health meant to them, like when they first immigrated?
No, because there is no time and space.
Yeah.
It's survival mode. So again, just no time and space. Like so many of us can look at our moms and be like, oh, she's anxious. Maybe there's depression. Maybe there is a panic attack. Maybe there is PTSD, postpartum. We can see that in our partners and our moms, and we can't say anything because they're in that survival mode. Even language-wise, I don't know what the word for mental health in Urdu is.
There is not a word, and even Punjabi. I mean, I remember trying to explain my job when I went to India. This would be almost 20 years ago now. And, I'm trying to tell them I'm a counselor. And I mean, now there's a lot more services and support in the human services world in our countries. But definitely when I was there, it was very hard to explain what I did.
Yeah.
And what about for you, though? Because you, at the same time, are immigrating with your mom. Did you have a different sense or an understanding of like mental health at that time?
Yes.
Yeah?
I did. Because I saw a lot of things shift in our family. Because my siblings were exploring their own identity, right? Being in a different school. Like just something as tiny as you don't have to wear uniforms to school anymore. Like I came from school. So we went to like British curriculum schools in Dubai and very strict uniforms and everything. Just the fact that we don't have to wear uniforms.
Now so then what do you wear? Like, do you even know what to wear?
No, I did not, because I dressed up in sweatpants, had one leg raised up to my knee and one down, hanging my backpack, got a pixie haircut. I didn't even know who I was.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you did all that when you arrived here?
I did all of that within the first few years.
Did you come with long hair?
I did come with long hair.
Then that
I always
pixie
had
is
long
very
hair.
short.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I actually wanted to go bald and have a buzz cut. I don't know what kind of identity crisis I was having, but
maybe you were watching our poor Britney Spears at the time.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe I was just seeing other people around me for the first time, like other women with a buzz cut, which was
so there's so many different options of how you could be as a girl.
Yeah.
I bet. Yeah, it wasn't one way. So wow.
A lot of my friends initially were from India, Pakistan.
Okay, yeah.
And my brother was a little bit ahead of me in that, where he just wanted to immerse himself in exposing to different cultures that everybody bring in. So he had friends who were slightly a bit different, like there'd be Arab or Afghani or, black or white or whatever. And I'd have just my friends who are Indian, Pakistani, and I just felt belonging with them. And I didn't feel like I had to. I've always been very unapologetic about who I am, like whether it be as a Muslim, whether it be as a Pakistani girl. So for me, I didn't need to make friends with certain people to feel like I fit in. I felt like I was very okay. Even back in Dubai, I was very okay having lunch with a teacher.
Oh, yeah. Right.
I didn't have to, I didn't need to go hang out with a friend.
Right.
Also because I didn't have any friends.
Well, that's fair. Good. That's I mean,
making myself sound
you
cooler
admitted that on your own. Yeah. Thank God for those teachers that care about us, that want to be our friends when no one else does.
Oh my goodness. High school here, my best friend was my chem teacher, Mr. Bowman.
There you go.
And poor guy, he was so kind.
So as you're finding your identity and, you feel like, hey, mental health really wasn't the thing for your mom, like to identify necessarily. Did it evolve her understanding of it over time?
A lot of learning, a lot of unlearning, a lot of trying to find a new balance. So a lot of what's right and what's not.
Yeah.
So a lot of that, and I'm sure that my parents did that in their relationship as well, even. For my siblings, that relationship for me changed as well.
Right.
Because I come from a culture where even though my brother is just a year and a half younger than I am, he still calls me Baji, which is older sister.
Right.
But to now, where older siblings, yes, they do play a certain role of being that caregiver, but we look at older siblings at the same level as our parents.
Oh, my sister still wishes me happy Mother's Day.
So does mine.
Yeah.
She bought me flowers this year too. Yeah.
There you go. Right?
Yep.
Like we parented.
Yeah, and I took that responsibility way too seriously, to the point where my siblings maybe felt more comfortable opening up to my mom than they did to me. Yeah. So you were strict. I was very strict. I was very, and that kind of changed our dynamic. And for the longest time, my siblings actually maybe lost some trust in me and not feeling comfortable in opening up to me or telling me things. So I had to, once I went through this mental health, I actually sat both of them down and I apologized to both of them. And I said, hey, in my own learning journey, I might have, totally messed up in how I was to you as a sister. And I hope you can find it within you to forgive me, because now I've learned better and I know better, and I hope I can do better. Aww. And we can rebuild that trust where you can feel comfortable to come to me and, share whatever it is, and know that regardless of anything, you have me on your side.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of unlearning that way when you talk about mental health is, catching myself accountable, that the parenting ways that I learned from my parents are not actually how I am supposed to be when given that caregiver parenting role.
Yeah, it is confusing, right? Yeah.
Because where do we learn parenting from? Our parents.
Exactly.
So now what I've learned from them, I got to unlearn and learn something new to still be relatable to my siblings.
Oh, for sure. Like, I can 1,000% relate with you as an older sibling. It's like the double-edged sword, because now in my 40s, like, my sister literally just turned 40 and she's a grown-up, and I still look at her like a baby and still try to run her life and still try to tell her what to do. And we laugh about it because I'm a lot better about it. I just want to go back to the mental health piece for a second, though, because when you and I had met, we talked, or earlier when we had talked about this, we talked about how we didn't want to glorify the resilience. We talked a lot today about the sacrifice our moms and our grandmas have had to make, to the point where, like, if we were to ask them, what was your dream as a little girl, they may not even know, they may not even remember. And, that is definitely a call to action for all of us to go back and be curious about. But then there's that other piece where, you'd also talk about resilience, and that this is the part where resilience is not sacrifice. It's not, it's also not silencing. It's not also this bad thing happened and let's just never deal with it. No. It's bouncing back, but, having dealt with things, coping and all that. Yeah. And so we in our community, in some ways, we're quite behind with mental health education and knowledge, but very grateful for people that are paving the way for us with these books and, these documentaries and these supporters in our community that are helping teach us ways to, deal with those bad things that have happened.
Yeah.
And so my curiosity, or my ask, is like, what would be some resources, or what would be some things that you think we do still as a community, and the gaps we need to focus on, particularly for and with our moms?
Being in the part of the world that we're in, it's not relevant, mental health.
It's a privilege, right?
It is a privilege. It's not relatable for our moms. There's a lot of pride that's attached to keeping our families together.
Yeah.
And when we think about putting them on the spot and for them to say out loud that maybe that's not the case, that's not fair.
Yeah.
So maybe our approach to providing mental health needs to be in a more culturally sensitive way. And there needs to be some learning around that. To have a woman sit there who's always tried her best to keep her family together, for her to sit there and say, oh, my kids don't want to hang out with me. Or my husband and I have a problem in our marriage. Or my siblings and I are fighting. Whatever their childhood experience is, or just saying, I don't know why I am not happy and haven't been for X number of years. Yeah. Even if it's just that.
That's a huge one, though.
Yeah.
Huge one for our community.
Yeah.
Do you think that if we could, we would know what it would be like to be happy in our community?
I think if we all looked inside, we know exactly what that felt like.
Yeah.
It might be playing on the land that they were growing up, running through the fields on a sunny day. Mm-hmm. That might have been happiness for them. And have they felt like that in recent times? It might be seeing their grandchild be born.
Yeah.
And that was happiness. But when was the last time they felt that way?
Right.
Right? It might be a nice hot cup of chai, and that could be happiness. But when was the last time they truly felt that on the inside? So I think they know what happiness feels like because it's not a very big thing. It's definitely not money, but have you felt that in recent times?
Yeah.
And how long has it been? And why do we not allow ourselves to feel that way on a regular basis?
Right.
And that it's okay to say, no, my happiness is important.
Yeah.
My peace of mind is important. So I think they know what happiness is.
Yeah.
It's not that they don't know, but I think it's very hard to find it in a land that they don't recognize, where they don't necessarily relate to a whole lot of stuff. And in doing that, it's okay to seek help. Yeah. It's okay to let somebody else guide you in where to go to find happiness.
Right.
And it's so important to encourage parents to do that, but at the same time also understand why it's so difficult for them. So not only do they have to say to somebody, especially moms have to say that, oh, this is what's problematic in my family, but to have to say it to a person that doesn't look like them.
Yeah.
That doesn't understand their struggle or battles or lived experiences.
Right.
Is a whole different challenge. So obviously they, deter and they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's so difficult and it's not comfortable.
I think you make a really good point about what is the best resource for, should our moms want to go and talk outside of their friend circle or whoever, they can. And I think for years, we've only had one option, which is white therapists.
Yeah.
And if there was, I remember a year when I first started in the field, the talk was anytime an Indian family would come to one of the centers I was at, they would not want to work with me because it was shame and, what are people going to think? And we could be related, all these sorts of things.
Yeah.
And so the divide and conquer. But here's the thing though, I think as a community, we have made strides because there are BIPOC healing and wellness. Literally the center that I go to for therapy is called the BIPOC Healing and Wellness Center.
Oh.
There are now these gaps that are starting to get filled by people of color that are recognizing, we need to go to school and be in the mental health world.
Yeah.
That is just as important as being a doctor, lawyer, and engineer. Mm-hmm. We need to support our community. And there's a lot of give back that's happening with therapists of color. So I myself am recognizing how important being with someone, just like you said, for our moms, that you don't have to explain your whole story to.
No.
You don't have to feel like you're defending. No. And you don't have to talk about these words like boundaries and things that exist in the Western world, but mean very different things in our community. And I'm not saying we do boundaries well as a community. I'm just saying it means something different.
Yeah. Or have to over-explain and, like you said, defend our culture. Because now we feel like, oh, I'm representing my culture.
That's so true. Right? It's not just one woman showing up. You're so right about that.
Yeah. So I think that is a big, big gap. There's a recent conversation I had with a friend, and they were very kind and they encouraged my perspective and input. We were talking about Mother's Day and how people have difficult relationship with moms and might not actually consider this a celebratory day or whatever. And we were talking about how a client's therapist said to them, do you need your mom or do you want your mom? And the person really related with that or related to that and said, oh, yeah, I can identify that I want my mom and don't need my mom. And I'm like, see, culturally, that would never sit with us.
My mom would be so offended right now if she heard that I said I only wanted her and I didn't need her.
And it's not true. No matter how strong I become, when we become mothers, we need our mom around to make laddus or to burp our kids
My
or
mom
to tell
moved
them
in
stories.
for 4 months with both babies.
There you go.
Like, the need and the want is translated very different. I agree. And I think, like you said earlier, language is so important. And certain words that you and I may use don't even exist in our language.
No, they don't. Or even the thoughts around boundaries or privacy, or like, what privacy when you have multiple families living under the same household? There's no privacy. And you can't afford privacy. It's a luxury.
Totally.
Right? So now coming here, moms hear that their kids want privacy and boundaries and all of that. It's gonna hurt a little bit. Sometimes it's important. I'm not saying it's not important.
That's right. Yeah.
It's very, very important to set certain boundaries. And it goes back to that system stuff, right? That we don't have systems in place that, you land in Canada and then what?
Yeah.
Right. And it could go back to as simple as the fact that teachers go to school, they do their degrees, and there's no trauma-informed care as part of their curriculum. And kids spend 8 to 10 hours with a teacher. Right. So something as simple as that, or cultural sensitivity training for teachers or school admin staff. Something as simple as that. There's nothing in place for. So when I say middle fingers up to systems, that's also part of what I, want to bring attention to. There's so
systemic
much
issues
work.
Are absolutely, it's like, how do you dismantle that? And one person can't. And it goes back to the beginning where we started, which was when we get to sit down and have the safe space to share these experiences and put them out, it's not pointing fingers. It's really about us making sense of what are these flags and gaps that I'm experiencing, these red flags that are going off, these gaps that I'm experiencing. And like you said, the accountability piece for our parents and for us around, okay, what's my role in this? But when there isn't any systems allowing and supporting that space, then our immigrant moms in particular can't do anything but internalize it and put it back in deep. And it comes out in not so great ways.
No.
Whether it's towards the child,
whether it's internal.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I'm a failing mom. The school's calling me and I don't get it. I don't know what to do. My kid's not like all sorts of these things. Like, it's like we could be more helpful. We could find a way to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. We are covering, we're moving along. We're covering a lot of things, and hopefully we're still honoring our moms as we're in and out of certain topics here.
Always.
Right? So talking about our moms, we talked about resiliency. We've talked about a little bit about mental health. I'd like to talk about now back to the sacrifice piece. So balancing sacrifice and self-care. So let's talk about that. What does that mean to you when you hear balancing sacrifice and self-care?
Well, if it's a two-way street. Okay? When we talk about caring for each other as part of a family, it has to be a two-way street. Whether it be between a husband-wife or partners, whether it be between parents and children, whether it be between in-laws, that's a whole different topic. But it has to be a two-way street. It cannot be one way. And I think when it's consistent, and there will be turns, there will be times where you're doing more of the heavy lifting than the other person, and that's okay. But then there has to be, accommodations made for you. There has to be some compensations for your hard work. And I think that is the difference between being in a healthy relationship versus constantly being the person that sacrifices. And that should never be okay for anybody in any relationship where you're the only person making the sacrifices. You're the only person making the first moves, initiating stuff or whatnot. And trust me, when we look at each relationship as, a two-way street, it's really also karma. It's really what you're gonna do is gonna come back to you. And I would love to share that my Maji, who's my mother-in-law, she treated me with so much love and so much belonging and welcomed me and was so generous in sharing her only son with me that when she was ill, it wasn't even a thought for me to be her primary caregiver. It wasn't even a thought for me to say to my father-in-law that, you know what, Abu, take the day. Go fishing with Omar. I'm here with Mom. Or I'm here with Maji and, you'll be fine. She'll be fine. We got this as a family. But it's a two-way street. If I had come into the family and I was the one who was constantly sacrificing, constantly had given up things that I like, and there was no compensation or accommodations made for me, I would be resentful.
Yeah.
Right? So
compassion fatigue.
Yeah.
Hardcore. Like, again, it's back to what you said in the beginning about the validation our moms don't get. It's the expectation that that's their job and that's their role to play, to be the doting daughter-in-law, to be the doting wife, the doting mother, whatever you want to call it. They don't always feel, maybe some of them don't even recognize it because they just expect it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But like, imagine, a plant that you were nurturing and taking care of, and a plant that you're giving the bare needs. I mean, we've seen this research project in elementary school.
Yeah.
Which plant's going to thrive and grow?
Yeah.
And which plant would you want, giving you what you need, like the thriving, growing one? And so for your mother-in-law to get, it's like her investment.
Yeah.
This care you're giving is because of what she put forth. But why is it that mother-in-laws and like, why the mother-in-law is before our time? She's the mother. She's experienced this too. Why is it that it ends up not always being in the way you're explaining it with love and care?
I think a lot of it is also, again, what we choose to focus on. We really focus on the negatives more. Even though it does exist, I don't want to belittle anybody's experience. Right off the bat, when somebody gets married, like, oh, your mother-in-law, oh, what's she like? Mm-hmm. Even when we are inquiring, the tone we use, the language we use, it's always like, no, what's that relationship like, right? And when we have those are hidden messages. Yeah. Right? So right off the bat, as we're entering a new relationship, I don't do that for my new boss, right? I don't say, I wonder what my boss is like. Mm-hmm. I give her a very clean slate and I invest my time and efforts in building those relationships. But we don't necessarily do that in mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationships. We always come with, and also because we're sharing somebody who we both deeply love. And that's very, very hard to do.
Why? Why do you think?
Because sharing love is hard to do. Because the relationship between a mother and a son and a husband and a wife, there is not only just love, there's also in our culture, there's a viewing them as a provider as well. And a mother might think, oh, this is my time with my son where he needs to provide for me, whether that be financial, whether it be care, whether it be spending time, yada, yada, yada. And a woman, when she gets married, she also sees her husband as a person, they're life partners. Mm-hmm. So obviously they want to spend time together. They want to build a new relationship, do new things together, yada. So she thinks this is her time with him. And this is the only time they're going to get, which is also true. Yeah. And in that, there is a lot of balancing that needs to happen. That is why I so strongly disagree when people say, in our culture, when people say, oh, building a home is a woman's responsibility. It's not. When men fail to mediate between their mothers and their wives, that is the basic source of where conflict sometimes starts.
Yeah.
So they contribute equally, if not more, in developing those relationships, because I don't know your mom. Your mom doesn't know me like you do. So to mediate that relationship, to foster that relationship is actually your job. And we don't put that on men as much as we put it on women.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that is also a big, because men have never been given that responsibility, so they don't know how to do that job. And in doing that, what happens is there is no fostering of a healthy relationship between their mom and their wife.
Yeah. So then what ends up happening is it's like picking sides or hands up. I'm going to stay out of this one. I'm going to be neutral here.
You guys fight it out and whoever wins.
Or stating facts. Well, that's my mom. Well, that's my wife. And we're like, yes, we know you were your wife and your mom. That's not the point. We got that part down. Yeah.
Let's do better or do differently. So I think that is what it is. But when going back to that sacrifice and self-care, sacrifice is always one-way street. That's how I describe sacrifice. It's like if you're the person that always has to call first, if you're the person who's always got to serve the food before you can sit and eat, if you're the person who's always got to be the last one whose head hits the pillow, then there's a problem. Then that's sacrifice. And we need to pause and reflect on what the relationship looks like. And in that, maybe you're missing self-care. In that, what you're doing is you're saying, oh, and it goes back to that conversation we had earlier where we were like, oh, it's selfish or self-care or self-awareness and all of that. We have to practice self-care. We have to put ourselves, if not first, at least somewhere in the middle, not last.
Yeah.
Because the collective family ideals we have, it might not always be possible or feel right or have time or space to always put ourselves first. So somewhere in the middle is also good. Yeah. But if you're constantly putting yourself last, or if people are always okay with having you be put last, then that's a problem. Then that's your hint that you need to practice self-care. You need to say, you know what? I am just going to go on a solo trip and I am going to figure out what's going on because nobody else is helping me.
And you figure out supper for the next 5 days.
And let's see how that goes for you.
So going back to balancing the sacrifice and self-care. So if there's one thing that maybe you've seen your own mother do, you'd seen your own mother-in-law, maybe an auntie, a great auntie out there. Like, what would you suggest to people out there in terms of how that actually can be done?
Be okay with not being perfect. And this is advice that I need to listen more of too. Be okay with having dirty dishes in the sink. If you are making sure that dishes are put away at the expense of your feet hurting, your brain hurting, your body aching, it's okay to have dirty dishes in the sink overnight for one night. It's okay if the laundry basket is piling over, spilling over, and it's not been done. It's okay if you haven't mopped or swept or dusted. It's like, it's really okay. Nobody's dying here because of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's
but I agree with what you're saying, even though I don't necessarily know if I do this, but I agree with this. So let's use me, and you said you need to work on this. So we can use ourselves as an example and all of our moms that suck at this. Everything you're saying makes so much sense. No one's going to come over because most of us clean in case somebody shows up, right? So no one's coming over. The laundry can wait, but when you're a homemaker, well, even if you work outside of the home, your primary job is the homemaker, as many people in the outside world see. And even if those people aren't coming, those people are like your boss, your mother-in-law, your cousin, whoever, the people that you are trying to do all this sacrificing for. They're not coming over. They're not going to see it. But it's so ingrained in there that if this is my job, which is to take care of my home, then would I get a good performance review? Would my boss give me a raise today if they came home because they saw I had laundry, I got the dishes, I have whatever crumbs on the floor, these things that absolutely, you're right, are okay. And it's so stupid that we, have that bad headache or that aching pain and we keep bending over and picking these things up. Like, it's ridiculous. But then at the same time, our worth is measured with this job that's supposed to be ours, which is being at home and cleaning and doing these things. So, and sometimes you might have your husband or your other family member, maybe your mother-in-law, father, whoever's living in the home with you saying, we never told you to do this. Like, relax. But society has decided that you are the homemaker, therefore your job is to keep this house clean. How do we work against that and dismantle that? Because that's a really big thing to live up against, to be like, I'm going to let it go today. I'm going to leave the dishes in the sink because I have to take care of my migraine, or have to take care of my sad feelings that keep coming out, whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, when your competition that's your job. And we're all expected to excel at our job, perform at high standard. How do we tell ourselves that, and tell our moms that you're still a high performer, you're still going to get the raise, you're still very competent at being the homemaker if the laundry basket's overflowing?
I think changing, keep going back to language. I think changing that, their primary job is to keep their family safe, fed, healthy, happy. That's it. That's the primary. And anything additional that we attach to it is created by society, embedded into us. But the primary goal is kids are fed, they're clean, they're safe, they're healthy, they're happy. Okay?
Yeah.
So start with things that don't directly affect any of that.
That's a good one.
So laundry, for example. If I don't do it today, does my child still have clean clothes? Yes. Are they going to be hurt if they wear the same shirt 2 days in a row? No. Start there. And when we see that, I started there, and when I gave that up, nothing bad happened, that is going to be it's only going to be difficult the first time.
Like most things, hey?
Yeah. And when we start there, we're going to be like, you know what? Hubs is fine, kids are fine, house is fine. And guess what? This time, I am fine too.
Oh my goodness, right?
Yeah.
That's huge. I really like how you said that. It's prioritizing.
Yeah.
This must-to-do versus to-do list instead of putting everything on I got to do everything at once. But yeah, like, the kids don't need that, or I don't need those clothes, or nobody needs to rush to get those dishes immediately. So what if they're sitting in the sink?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's for self-worth.
Yeah.
I think sometimes these things our moms have found in their lonely house when everyone's at work and school and they're by themselves running the show. I think they've had these conversations with themselves and convinced themselves of something that locked it up and threw the key, and it's hard to unlock that.
Yeah. And here's where I want to challenge then moms. I want to say then in that moment, then you're doing it for you. And it's okay to say then you're doing it for you. Because what's happening is you're doing it for you, but you're expecting the reward from the child or the husband. And that's not fair then. Because they are going to say, it's okay, we could have done without that. And that's going to hurt. Right? So if you're truly doing it for the kids and for the husband, because they will not be safe, they won't be happy, they won't be whatever it looks like, then sure. But if it's because you don't know what to do and you're filling up a void because that's how you've been for so many years, then this is you doing it for you. And I would like to encourage moms to then consider, how else can you fill up that void? Cleaning is not it. It could be dancing. It could be putting your feet up and listening to old Hindi classical music. It could be watching a favorite movie that you haven't watched in ages. It could be whatever, Mom. It could be whatever you want it to be. Okay? But then it is for you.
Well said.
that's what I want to challenge moms with, because if you're doing it for you because you don't know what else to do, then it's for you. Then don't expect that reward from a partner or the kids, because it's not coming.
Yeah.
And that's going to hurt you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's really well said. And I think it's being okay to admit that that is for me.
Yeah.
That I'm doing these 7 tasks that I hate so much or whatnot. And you know what? Like, even I think about that and I fall into that pattern too. It's like, did you see that I vacuumed under the couch? And everyone's like, okay, but like, we didn't ask you to. Yeah. Well, I did it and no one cares. And then everyone's like, but like, relax, lady. Like, you know, and then you feel like you're not being validated. No one cares. But at the end of the day, some of those things I have to, you know, be accountable to, as well as I did it because I felt the need I needed to do it. I felt, you know, it was gross and it was for me so I can sit on the couch and know underneath my couch it's clean.
Yeah.
You know, but it's not going to impact. If I didn't do it, it was going to be the same response. No one was going to, you know, be affected. If my kids' laundry didn't get done and they needed it for baseball, okay, maybe that's different.
Yeah.
But also my kid should be doing his own laundry now. Yeah. That's the next podcast.
Yes, it is.
When
teaching your kids independence.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add to, you know, as we talk about sacrifice and self-care?
No, just that self-care has to be with intent, has to be with purpose. It can't be, oh yeah, self-care. I scrolled on my phone for 2 hours. That's not self-care.
No, that's like filling another void.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So anything that fills a void, and that's what you're doing, and you're looking for a reward after it, that's not self-care.
Do I want quality of life? And do I have the ability to be able to give some of that time to my quality of life, which is sitting down, you know, meditating, whatever it is that works for our moms. And I think sometimes for our moms, they don't always know who they are, right? No. Because their life has been for someone else, as we've been talking along the way. And it's overwhelming to think of, well, what brings me joy, or what are the things I want to do? And I think that's also a sign, if we're overwhelmed and figuring that out, of what brings me joy. And there are ways to start slow and start small. And it's, you know, again, to the community, how do you fill your time?
Yeah. And that's so important for moms to kind of see this as, you know what? You are on a mission. Mission has been completed.
You did good.
You did good. You're successful.
Mm-hmm.
Here's us giving you all the stars, and you're enough. You are enough. You have done enough. You can, you know, put your feet up and you can take a deep breath. And firstly, sleep for 8 hours. You know?
Oh my gosh. Please sleep. Okay. Just sleep.
Sleep. And, you know, reach out to people, hold people accountable, whether it's your own children. Tell them to do their own laundry, to do their own tasks. Whether it's your partner and you're a mom to a newborn, tell them to pitch in more. You know, whatever that looks like, speak up. Just speak up. So I'm really hoping that people have more courage to be kind to themselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a really good point. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I think it's one of those conversations that we can continue having. Because I would love nothing more than moms, immigrant moms, to send messages, and children of immigrant moms to say, Mom, listen to this. And maybe, you know, maybe I'll get to that part. I always say these conversations are door openers, and they are. Like, you know, maybe you and I have only talked about a small part because of our lived experience. But we have more to contribute to. So we would love to add to this conversation, because I really like what you started, and I would like to continue to keep the spotlight on our moms. It's great. It's the month of mothers, but mothers exist outside of this month. And I think, you know, it's a complicated conversation for some of our moms, for some of us kids, but I think it's a well-needed one. And again, we only have so much time before we have to start talking about getting in that time machine to go back and redo things with our parents or grandparents. So if our parents are here, our grandparents are here, I think this conversation is an opportunity to go back and ask for stories and even record some of those, you know, have our parents our moms, voices recorded for future, I think can be really, really impactful, whether it be for our own children, for ourselves when we're sick and need our mom and whatnot.
Which we always do.
We always do. Yeah. We all come from a mom.
Yeah, we all do. And I think when we're hurt, probably the first few things or first word I say is mom, mom, or whatever. So I think that in itself should be a badge of honor for each mom, for them to say to themselves, okay, I did well.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's that or motherfucker. Those are the words that come out when we're sick, which is my favorite swear word. So there we go, right? Okay, so let's do a call to action. So if there's anything and only one thing, what would be the thing that you would hope our listeners will take from this conversation today?
I hope they're listening to this with their mom side by side. That is my thing. Because yes, you can send it to your mom and you can listen to it on your drive to work or, home from work. But together, it's going to be two things. It's either going to open up this box for discussions and topics and whatnot, or it's going to be awkward silence. It's like, are you getting this? Are you getting this?
Yeah. Or a little bit of both. Who knows, right? Yeah, totally. Well, and I hope that it's not the latter. It's not awkward silence. I mean, I think some of us live in that in our relationship with our families, but this conversation is not to make us immigrant children or child of immigrant parents feel bad about something. And it's definitely not to make our moms or immigrant moms feel bad about anything either. Like, look, we're doing the best we can. Yeah. And the message here is that we are very, very grateful that our immigrant moms have led us to where they have.
Yeah.
And, we're just saying it's okay to take a break. Yeah. And it's okay to do you for a bit. And I think that's really the biggest part of what I hear from you is, give your mom a hug, write your mom that letter if you can't give her the hug, make some peace with yourselves, because at the end of the day, I think a big part of whether we want to admit or not, who we are, it comes from whether it's the mother that gave birth to us or the mother figure that's been in our life, but that's a very influential person in our life.
And for those who can't do any of the above, just even your own healing. If you are in a difficult relationship with your mother and you can't, that's okay too. You will figure it out. Focus on healing.
Yeah.
Focus on healing. If there's one thing you can take from this podcast and sit and think about it and contribute to your healing, that's still way better than not moving the scale at all, right? So there will be people who are saying, oh yeah, this is great because both of them have a relationship with their mothers, and many people don't, and it's hard.
Yeah. I did say this a few minutes ago. I'll say this again. These conversations are always door openers. So if you want to contribute to this, if you want to add something that maybe we missed, please, please, please do. So you know where to find us, and you know that I will get back to you. I'm good at it. So I really hope that we can hear from you.
She really is.
Thank you so much for coming on and spending today with me. I loved your email. I loved our FaceTime, and I really, really appreciated this time together. I loved our conversation, and honestly, all it took was you reaching out, and it means a lot. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much for doing the work you're doing. And I really hope that it's not just words. But really, thank you for doing the work that you're doing. It is paving the way for a lot of us. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for replying to the email. Thank you for making the time. Yeah, and just for your bravery and your kindness. Thank you, really, truly.